Lastly, many of you will know my face because I did the media circuit on Monday, and there are a number of things that we want to address within that. Specifically, I want to address Mayor Tory's response letter yesterday. I want to make it very clear to Mayor Tory that he has no place in this discussion and he needs to stay in his lane. I want to make it very clear to Mayor Tory that we are not interested in politicking back and forth with him. We are not interested in going back and forth with him as we've done this year. We are not interested in his sound bites. We are not interested in his vapid interest in this community. We want to make it very clear to Mayor Tory. I want to make it very clear to Mayor Tory that this is an issue between the LGBT community. This is an issue between the LGBT community, the Black community, and Pride Toronto, and the community at large. This is a conversation that has existed before he took office and will continue after he takes office. And this is a conversation that warrants real community investment, that warrants real discussion, that warrants real hurtful, painful, sad revelations, and that politicking and his interventions have no place in that. Having said that, we also want to acknowledge that there are a lot of discourses that are missing. It's been 3 days, 3 days of doing media nonstop, answering questions, having conversations with you all, and yet there's no one who's talking about Samaya Dalmore. No one's asking questions about the Black lives that are lost and why we're talking about police violence. No one has asked us to talk to BQI or Blackness Yes, or to get an actual understanding of what it's like to be a Black queer youth in this city. As such, we want to reiterate our demands, and we want to remind people of our demands. We want to remind people of the reasons why we halted the parade, why we've escalated to this action, and why we're continuing to take action. Black Lives Matter Toronto, along with various community groups, including BQI and Blackness Yes, have the following demands. 1, commit to BQI, Black queer youth's continued space, funding and logistical support. Self-determination for all community spaces, allowing community full control over hiring, content, and structure of their stages. Full and adequate funding for community stages, including logistical, technical, and personnel support. To double the funding for Blockorama and to include ASL interpretation and headliner funding. To reinstate and make commitments to increase the community stages and spaces. This includes various stages, including the South Asian stage, BQI, etc. A commitment to increase representation amongst Pride Toronto staffing and hiring. Prioritizing Black trans women, Black queer people, Indigenous folk, and other people from vulnerable communities. A commitment to more deaf and hearing ASL interpreters, including Black deaf and hearing ASL interpreters for the festival. Removal of all police floats and booths in all Pride marches, parades, and community spaces. A public town hall organized in conjunction with groups from marginalized communities, including but not limited to Black Lives Matter Toronto, Blackness Yes, and BQI, to be held 6 months from today. Pride Toronto will be present to update an action plan on the aforementioned demands. Our demands have stayed put, our demands have stayed still, and we are staying firm on our demands. Unfortunately, we have seen Pride Toronto recant from their commitment of these demands. As you all have seen, as the world have seen, as my cousins who are overseas have seen, Pride Toronto executive directors and co-chairs sign these demands on the streets, sign these demands in front of the world, and sign these demands and have stated their commitment to these demands. But unfortunately, in the Monday afternoon, this message box was changed by Pride Toronto executive director Mathieu. And we as a community are very disappointed to see that. We as a community know, though, that this is historically accurate of Pride. There are promises that are given to the Black community. There are commitments that are given to the Black LGBT community, and those commitments are quickly recanted. In this case, it took less than 24 hours, which is really unfortunate, but really showed the true nature of Pride Toronto. As such, we have left no choice but to go back to our community and to evaluate our options. So we want to announce a community meeting that Black Lives Matter Toronto, along with these groups, will be holding. This community meeting will be held in the next couple of weeks. Will be held with our community, Black LGBT folks, and really it will be held to reevaluate these demands and evaluate what our options are as a community. Right now, the options are open. Right now, we're putting everything on the table. Right now, the sky's the limit. And we want Pride Toronto and the mainstream LGBT community to know that we see through the anti-Black racism. We see through the violence that have happened, and that this community is very serious in moving forward, and moving forward in ways that make sense to us, and move forward in ways that make sense to our youth, and moving forward in ways that see these demands being met.